Welcome back to Southwest Yard and Garden. I'm Curtis Smith. As summer moves into fall and fall into winter, we begin to think of how our gardens are burning out outdoors and how our winter gardening season's beginning, gardening indoors. And we need to know which soils to use, what containers to use, and we'll be talking about that right now. We've got several options as we're gardening indoors. Sometimes we have difficulties because gardening indoors can be a problem, but we also have certain opportunities. And one of those opportunities is in customizing the soil to the plants. When we're gardening out of doors, we're working with New Mexico soil. We may add compost to the soil. We may add different amendments to the soil. We may add fertilizer to the soil. When we garden indoors inside a container, even if we're gardening outside in a container, we customize the soil. We use that which we develop especially for growing plants in containers. We can use a store-bought product which may have all kinds of things added to it. We can use homemade compost added to garden soil and sand and other things, so we can design the soil the way we want it. And we can design it to be what we want. Sometimes, though, we find that the soil is dry. I went to my compost pile this morning to get some compost to use, and it was dry and powdery, so I put it inside this bag, put some water with it, have let it seal up and soak up the moisture. It's now ready to use. Sometimes, though, we'll also have potting soil or compost which is dry. We can use an old can with a lid. Put the water in with it and let it sit with that. We'll have some nice moist potting soil or compost, and it stays this way for a while here. Now, you don't want to leave it too long or it'll begin composting more inside here, and in a sealed container that may not be a good thing to do. After we have chosen the soil, we begin to think about how we're going to use the soil. We may say, well, for some plants, I want the potting soil the way it is. Perhaps I've got something that likes a lot of organic matter, so I'll grow it in straight compost, so that's not always a good idea. Sometimes we'll say, though, I want to blend it. So I'll blend it with soil or with sharp sand. If I'm growing cacti or other plants which like well-drained soils, I'll mix a lot of sand with the soil. If I'm growing something that needs more moisture, I'll put less sand in it. I can add perlite. I can add small gravel. There are a lot of things I can add to the soil to tailor that soil to my needs. And once I've done that, I also look and say, well, what am I going to plant it in? Well, I can use the flower pots. Now, this is one that has been used before. It's important to clean it, wash it out very well, and a good idea to rinse it with a 10% chlorine bleach solution, which means you take 1 part chlorine bleach, 9 parts of water to make a solution, then rinse this very well, take it out, and let it dry. But wash it in the chlorine bleach, rinse it to take any of the chlorine bleach off of it, set it aside to dry, then you're ready to use it. We can use the round pots, we can use the square pots. We find that things we bought plants in earlier in the year, we can use them. They're fairly flimsy, but for starting new plants, which we'll put out in the garden in the spring, that's a good choice. We've got all different kinds of this. This one's a 4-pack, here's a 6-pack. And then we can go to even the smaller things. If we want a very small plant, we've got a very small space. There are small pots we can use. And sometimes I like to recycle things. So I'll use styrofoam cups. There's one that has a hole in it. I was eating ice cream and I got a little industrious with the ice cream, so I've already got the drainage in this one. With this one, there's no drainage, so I'll have to make holes in it. That's an important part of container gardening, to make sure you have a hole. With the styrofoam, it's real easy to use a blunt pencil. Sometimes we have other containers that we buy at the store. There are a lot of different things we can use: yogurt, cottage cheese, sour cream containers. This one you probably want to use a hot nail. I like this one because it has the clear lid, so as I start seed inside here, I can cover it to hold the humidity in. Sometimes at a fast food place, we'll find nice little greenhouses, all for our use. We can use soil, or sometimes I like to get this Jiffy 7 pellets, which I can place in what used to be the lid, add water, let the Jiffy 7 pellets swell up, plant the seed or a cutting in that, put the lid on, and I've got a nice little greenhouse. Things will grow very well here. And here's a handy little device I found in a fast food store. A hot dog came in this one. I can use this as a greenhouse, or I can use it as 2 planting trays. So I've got a lot of flexibility with these. So as we look, we've got soil and containers to work with. We can be creative. We can reuse things that we'd otherwise throw away, so we can get extra use out of these things. And let's not forget that we need to put something underneath a container as we grow things in it. We want something to catch the water so we don't ruin our windowsills. We can always work with our regular garden tools when we're working with indoor plants, our full-scale garden tools, but you know, you can also get some smaller, more focused type tools that you can use. I've got 2 sets that were given to me as gifts that work perfectly for indoor containers, and I especially like this one when I'm working with some compacted soil in a pot, replanting something in there. And so we've got some nice tools we can use. This was made especially for working in terraria, but it works in pots as well. And so we can find a lot of interesting tools. And if you've got a gardener friend who likes to garden even in the winter, you might consider these as gifts